We're here, in Unreal. I've spent a few months with little actual progress on the game, aside from making the exact same thing I already had, except better and in a different engine. But now, let's talk about level design. For those who don't know, a quick recap. I'm making a semi-open world action RPG that falls somewhere on the spectrum between Kingdom Hearts and Dark Souls. So you get dropped into the center of the world, and from there you can take on these dungeons around you in any order you like. The dungeons also border each other, and you can just totally walk from one into the other. So they're a little bit more like zones compared to proper dungeons. Each dungeon will reward you with a new weapon that you can then use, and once you have them all, you can return to the center and find the final boss. Now, as far as design goes, I keep calling these things dungeons, and that is because each of these dungeons or zones will follow a very similar blueprint. There will be a boss door that is locked behind 3 different keys. Each of those keys can be found in a room in the corresponding dungeon. The game itself is split up into a large number of small-ish rooms, much like in the Kingdom Hearts games. Think things like Kingdom Hearts 1 or maybe even Birth by Sleep, more so than the huge rooms that you find in games like Kingdom Hearts 3. Anyway, each zone will have 3 rooms that hold special keys to the boss door. One of those keys will be a combat trial, be it a mini-boss or a particularly difficult set of enemy waves, or anything that I can think of really. But for those of you who have seen my previous devlog about improving the combat of my game, well, I have improved the combat, but part of my strategy there was in order to improve the combat of the game, I needed gameplay sections that are not combat, to keep things from getting stale. A big part of that is adding more platforming. Not as a goal for the levels itself, but as a way to traverse these levels and make it more interesting, something like Hollow Knight does, or really almost any Metroidvania game. But then, each of these zones will also come with at least one room that does focus on some actual platforming to gain one of the boss keys. It'll be pretty light on difficulty since this isn't a 3D platformer, so I won't implement a wide moveset like games such as Mario Odyssey or A Hat in Time do. It's just there to have something that is not mash X until the credits roll. In much the same way, we're going slightly Zelda-like for the 3rd key in every zone, because those will be in puzzle rooms. Once again, the puzzles won't be as detailed as they are in the Zelda games. After all, Zelda puzzles are usually made to test your new abilities with new items. And that's of course not something that I'll be adding in my game. I could make it dependent on specific moves from the weapons, but that then destroys the possibility to do any dungeon in any order you like. So they'll be very simple standalone puzzles to give players a little bit of a break from all the action-based gameplay. So at that point we have a game where most of the levels are a combination of some light platforming and combat, with some points of interest that give you a variation on gameplay, which then leads to a boss fight with more complex AI, which slowly rewards you with more and more weapons, making the actual combat for the player itself more complex as the game goes on as well. This whole setup should create a good flow in both a per dungeon basis, as well as keeping things interesting for the entire game. And of course, in between all of those points of interest will be a bunch of filler rooms, which you can traverse in any way and order you like. Some of the rooms will rely more so on combat, and other rooms will rely more on platforming or maybe even light puzzle solving as well. Based on what you as a player like most, you can craft your own path through these dungeons. Because the puzzle rooms and the platforming rooms will also still reward you with experience, so you won't have to miss out on character progression just because you're avoiding some combat. Of course, you'll want to be at least decently good with the combat, since the bosses themselves are unavoidable and kind of the whole point of the game. Still, letting players go through the adventure in the style that suits them most, while also forcing them to do one of these other things every so often, should make for a fun balance and interesting routing throughout all the dungeons. So, if you want to see me implement all those ideas as we speak, I am finishing up a rough build of the tutorial level for the game, which already follows this basic structure. And very soon I'll have a test build ready for people to play and give their feedback on. So hit that subscribe button down below and hit that bell icon to be the first to know when it's ready. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page. And a special thank you to Eleanor for supporting at the Cave Digger tier on Patreon.